So, David, thank you very much for coming to the fashion world, dragging you into the fashion world in front of a guy wearing a dress.
I love it. I love it.
But first of all, you're the guy. You are the person people talk about, especially, I think, for me, I think of you and brain health and all the years. It's like 3 decades at the Mayo Clinic and really creating an incredible reputation for being an expert in the field. And now your role at Atria, really being the lead for what the future of medicine, especially brain medicine, is and will be. And of course, the minute I heard about you, it was like, oh my God, I have to meet this guy. He's just so smart and so well-versed on things that have to do with the brain, including longevity. So welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Norma.
So we've had many conversations, especially about longevity and what the steps are now. What is the protocol now when it comes to thinking about longevity?
So when I think about longevity, my first reaction is to say that about 80% or so of longevity has to do with lifestyle and the choices that we make. And it sounds almost cliche now, but exercise, stress, sleep, nutrition, diet, and managing what we call vascular risk factors, hypertension, diabetes, are the most important when it comes to longevity. You know, when we established Atria, we're not a longevity clinic. We're more like a health span clinic. Mm-hmm. So when I think about longevity too, most people think about lifespan, but we think about health span, which is the length of life that you live in good health, in optimal health, without disability or frailty or functional impairment. And so when I think about that, I think about how can we extend health span? Because if we extend health span, inevitably part of that is extending lifespan. Mm-hmm. So if I can keep you free of chronic diseases, I'm obviously going to extend your life. But some people think about longevity as how long can I live to be 110, 120, 150 or longer? And, you know, there's a whole field of science now aimed at combating the biological processes in the body that cause us to age.
Yeah.
So if you can have an anti-aging treatment, for example, then you could live longer.
Yes. And be a bazillionaire.
Exactly. Yeah. But I will say that for me, the two are kind of inextricably linked. And I say, what I mean by that is, if you can combat the mechanisms involved in aging, since most chronic diseases are diseases of aging, then the two are inextricably linked. Yeah. So the benefit of a healthier life will mean a longer life, and the benefit of a longer life will likely mean a healthier life. Mm-hmm. So if 80% is lifestyle, boy, it's really important that we double down and focus on the things that will extend our healthy life. And we can go into that in much more detail, but because it's easy to say exercise and diet and sleep and stress, but what does that actually mean?
Right. And what does it mean in the moment? Like, what is the trend of the kind of exercise and the kind of diet? And that's also confusing because there'll be a whole protocol that may be a decade or two, people following the protocol as healthy. The typical kind of the pyramid diet that in the American culture, we look at that pyramid now, we say, what the hell is that pyramid about? It doesn't make any sense.
I know.
And then it switched to another where less meat, heart health, do that. And now it's like get that meat. There's not enough meat that you can put on your plate. So there's a little confusion with that too, because we all want to eat healthy food that's going to keep everything working and not do anything to harm our bodies. And we all want to work out. So if you were doing yoga right now, no. You better pick up weights while you're doing yoga because there's another protocol. So I think there's a little, and I want to try everything new. And of course I do. But there's also this logic in my brain. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not giving up yoga or Pilates for just doing weight. That doesn't make sense. There's just some logic here. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, in this information age that we find ourselves in, there's so many different platforms with information coming at us so fast.
Right.
While at the same time, medical knowledge is doubling like every 2.5 months.
Interesting.
And it's really hard to keep up with it if you're, Joe Public.
Yeah.
Right? It's very difficult to keep up with it. And there's this real democratization of expertise where everybody is an expert. Right. Not that I'm an expert, but...
Well, I think little bit, I might say just a little bit of an expert there.
Well, when I think about exercise, let's take exercise for a moment. I was at the World Health Organization about a half a dozen years ago, and all over their walls were posters that said, just move.
Yeah.
Movement. Yeah. Even what's called now, just movement snacks. Sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So even if you take snacks and just get up and move a little bit throughout the day. But there have been studies done showing that, and there's a dose response here, so that the more you do it, up to a certain point, the better it is. There's a study done that shows that if you just walked 4,400 steps a day, you reduce mortality by 40%.
Wow.
Yeah. And even if you walk like half of that, there's a reduction in mortality, a significant reduction in mortality, up to about 9,800 steps. So this 10,000 step seems to be approximately right. So it tends to plateau at 8,000 to 10,000 steps. So if you just walked 4,000 to 5,000 steps, you'll significantly improve your longevity.
I wonder what the typical average number of steps is for a New Yorker.
Well, I can tell you, for me, if I don't take a walk in the park or do any exercise on the elliptical or on the treadmill, I will walk somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000 steps.
Yeah.
And my distance from my apartment to my workplace is not very far.
Yeah.
It's just a few blocks. But just walking around the office and walking to and from work I get about 4,000 to 5,000 steps just doing that.
Yeah. If I just do that also, I'm somewhere between that and 8,000. And then if I do my other things, then, I hit 10,000 or 12,000 depending. And you actually do feel different. I think the conscious, thank goodness for measuring. I think consciously being aware of what you did that's different from the last 2 or 3 days, and that you do feel different.
Yeah.
I think measuring is incredibly helpful.
Very helpful. Very helpful. And I do track because I'm interested, because if I see that on a particular day I've gotten 2,000 steps or less, it motivates me.
Yeah.
It motivates me. So I would say just move, and you don't have to run a marathon, right? Small steps matter. And so if you want to kick it up a notch, then this sort of zone 2 exercise that we talk about, where you're breaking a sweat, your heart rate's up, you're a little bit short of breath, but I can have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And if you do that 3 to 5 days a week, right, for 20 to 30 minutes, that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And now people are talking about high intensity interval training or HIIT. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Well, you might sprint for 30 seconds and then rest for 20 seconds. Or cycle fast for 30 seconds and then rest for 20 seconds. And keep doing that. It's like in intervals, and do that over 4 to 5 minutes. And that seems to have additional benefits.
Yeah.
So there's levels.
Yeah. And then the weight training is another, I think, important addition to the different types of exercise.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when people think about exercise, they generally don't think about pumping weight necessarily as exercise. They think about aerobic exercise. So resistance training, because after the age of about 50, we're losing about 1% to 2% of our muscle mass per year.
Yeah.
So ensuring that you preserve muscle mass is so important to avoid what we call sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle mass with age. Sort of the equivalent of that in the bone is osteopenia. So sarcopenia, osteopenia. But keeping muscle mass up is important, not only to avoid frailty as you age, but also for women, especially for bone health.
Yeah.
And there are chemicals released from muscle, speaking as a neurologist now, that are important for brain health.
Really?
Yeah.
What is that about?
So there are certain hormones and chemicals that are released from muscle that get into the brain and stimulate the production of certain chemicals, like one we call BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which just means that it's sprouting new neurons, new cells, and forming new connections. So people don't think about muscle as being important to the brain, but it absolutely is.
Well, you definitely relate exercise to the brain. I think from not from your perspective necessarily, but from the perspective of mental health and motivation and purpose. Exercise and the brain really have a nice kind of connection. I see when we work out at 12 noon here, everybody that are in the workout group, not everybody does it all the time. People sometimes do, but there is a different motivation in what the group achieves, how they achieve it, the work pattern in the second half of the day. And it's really connecting to focus, concentration, achieving things that they didn't think they could achieve, that they achieved during the workout. And just then working out as a group is also so amazing.
So when I first met you, you told me about this. I think it's the first and only time I've ever heard of that. I think it's brilliant. First of all, exercise is absolutely the most important prescription that I can give a patient.
Yeah.
We could spend hours just talking about the heart benefits, the brain benefits, the overall health benefits of exercise. And again, it's almost cliche to say, but we know the science now as to exactly what exercise is doing to promote the health and the anti-aging effect. We know the mechanisms. But you're right. If you do that, your vigilance, your attention, your ability to process information, your working memory, your mood, your affect, and that social connectivity, by doing it together, I think it's absolutely brilliant.
And we live stream. So we have people following us too. And we have guest trainers also. It's great. Out of sleep, diet, exercise, out of those three, which is number one?
That's a tough question, but because there's a lot of evidence for all three of them. But I would say, I hesitate to even say what's number one, but I would think moving and exercise is now number one. After that, I would say sleep is probably number two. And then I would say diet is number three.
Yeah.
If you were to force me to rank order those, I'd probably put it there.
Yeah.
So I think people just have to move and they have to sleep.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think it really is. I think that because I've exercised consistently in my life, I feel more energetic than I thought I would at my age.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's such a strange thing that, I don't consciously think of it, but I think, oh wow, I like working out with my team. they're much younger than I am, but I'm fine. Like I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And it's so great for your head, for how you feel. I think it also helps with sleep. I think when or it affects sleep. If I don't work out in my usual, like I try something and it's not really doing anything for me, or I'm not feeling well and I don't work out, my sleep is definitely not good.
Yes.
Or if I work out too much, which I did last weekend, because I was sitting editing photographs and I didn't want to sit so much. So I would, in between, do a workout and I was wiped out. And my aura ring said, you had too much stress today. And it was like all those workouts were like that. And I couldn't sleep.
Yes.
So let's talk about sleep.
So, by the way, there's quite a bit of evidence now that exercise does promote sleep.
Yeah.
And all stages of sleep, actually. But you're right, there's a Goldilocks effect here. If you don't do it, or if you do too much of it, you're going to disrupt your sleep. So there's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
And we've talked about what that sweet spot that might be. But sleep, there's a reason why we spend 1/3 of our lives sleeping.
A third. Yeah.
When you think about
it,
right?
never thought about it in that. Wow.
There's got to be a very good reason for that.
Yeah.
And so now we're beginning to understand why that is. So one reason from a neurologist perspective is that when you sleep, particularly in deeper stages of sleep, you open up these channels in the brain. And we develop a lot of sewage in our brain, so to speak.
Oh, wow.
During the day. So when we're awake, there's lots of chemicals and proteins being released. That accumulates. These channels are kind of shut down when we're awake, and they open up when we're sleeping. So getting rid of all those proteins like amyloid and tau that have become associated with Alzheimer's disease now, and other proteins, we flush them out during sleep. So it's kind of like we're cleaning up at the end of a day, right? So it's important for that reason. But as it turns out, it's also important for insulin sensitivity. It's also important for metabolic health, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's also sleep deprivation, according to the World Health Organization, is a carcinogen. So we know, for example, that sleep deprivation, one night of getting less than 6 hours of sleep, and I was talking to you earlier, and I said, you're not seeing my sleep score from last night. But 1 hour of sleeping less than 6 hours reduces what we call natural killer cells in our body, which are cells that go around looking for bugs and looking for cancer cells that are trying to pop up and squash them, right? By 70%, just one night of sleep deprivation.
Unbelievable.
So that's why when you say to people, you need to sleep, you need to explain why you need to sleep and how can sleep deprivation be a risk factor for cancer? How can it be a risk factor for diabetes? How can it be a risk factor for heart disease and neurodegenerative disease? If you explain the mechanisms, people get it. If you had 1 week of sleep deprivation, right? Yeah. You turn on about 700 or turn off 700 genes. And the genes that you turn on are genes that are important for inflammation and that have been associated with cardiovascular disease and neurodegenerative disease. And the genes that you turn off are the genes that regulate your immune system. So that's why sleep deprivation makes you more prone to an infection, makes you more prone to cancer, makes you more prone to Alzheimer's disease, and the list goes on.
Yeah. So, but then there are people that can sleep 4 hours and function. And I don't understand how that happens, because my whole idea of like having 6 hours to me is like, I'm going to have a rough day, but less than that is really debilitating. I also had a bad night. You did. So we both are in the deprived area, but are different people programmed differently, because there are a lot of people who seem to function really well on less sleep.
It's a great question. So believe it or not, we have circadian clocks that regulate each organ in the body on a 24-hour cycle. We have one in our brain, and we have a clock in our brain, and we have a clock in every organ in our body. As you can imagine, people's genetic clocks are genetically programmed. And so every one of us is a unique genetic animal.
Yeah.
And so some people's circadian clock and their circadian rhythms are different.
Yeah.
And so they can get by with less sleep. I'll confess to you that during my training and during my early career, I used to wear as a badge of honor the fact that I could get by on 4 hours of sleep.
Right.
I was one of those people. And it allowed me to be very productive. But it probably wasn't the best thing for me. So I'm now rigid and trying to get at least 7 hours of sleep. And here again, there's the Goldilocks effect. So if you get less than 6 or more than 9, neither are good.
Yeah.
So somewhere between 7 and 9 hours. And for me, is if I get 7 hours, between 7 and 7.5 hours, that's a good night's sleep. And I feel it the next day.
Yeah.
Because what's the other thing that sleep does is it regulates your inbox. And what I mean by that is all of the things that we're going to learn today come in and are filed in an area in our brain called the hippocampus. And when you don't sleep, I can do an image of your brain and show that your hippocampus is not functioning. So the files are either not getting in, or once the files are in your inbox, sometimes you'll save that email. That's the same thing with our brain. We have an inbox, we have something that comes in, we store it temporarily, and then we store it permanently. So when you don't sleep, you fail to receive the email, or you receive the email, but you don't store it.
Oh.
And that's how it affects memory. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to ask then about memory. And so what are the things people can do to really keep memory strong and kind of functioning at its best? Are there things that other than lifestyle, are there practices or games or whatever that we can do?
Yeah, I mean, other than lifestyle, and because lifestyle, again, is like uber important, hitting your targets, knowing your numbers and knowing your targets. What I mean by that is, I want to know that my blood pressure, for example, is 120 or less. I want to know that my LDL, or even more importantly, ApoB, which is a bad cholesterol, is 70 or less. I want to know that my A1C, which is a measure of my sugar control, glucose control, is less than 5.5. So if I know my numbers and I know my targets, that's really important. Okay. And so if your audience knew nothing else, it's 120, 70, and 5.5. And
getting it checked.
Getting it checked. You have to get it checked.
Yeah.
So knowing your numbers and knowing your targets. Social connectivity. You talked about it when you exercise with your staff. Having that social connectivity, people in blue zones, the so-called blue zones around planet Earth, who live longer. One theme about those people and how they live is they're very connected both to family and friends. So that social connectivity with coworkers, with friends, with family, really important. Yeah. And then cognitive exercise. Just like physical exercise is really important.
Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. And so sometimes there are cognitive exercises that can be helpful. And there are different platforms. Like, for example, one we use is called Brain HQ. And there have been a couple of hundred studies showing that if you use Brain HQ, you can train your brain to speed up your processing speed. You can improve your working memory. And so doing cognitive exercises that train different aspects, different areas of your brain and different cognitive functions can be important. Your brain likes novelty. Okay. So what do I tell people? Always be learning something new. Don't be doing the same things, whether it's an exercise, like for example, dance. It's both a motor exercise and it's a cognitive exercise. If you saw me in a dance floor trying to learn steps, you'll realize what a challenging cognitive exercise it is. Or learning a new language.
Yeah.
A real cognitive exercise.
That's a test.
Or a new instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So, like right now, unfortunately, I don't have the time, but I can tell you that when I do have more time in my
You're
life.
going to be playing guitar with a band somewhere.
Maybe.
I'm seeing it happen.
Maybe. But I will definitely, I was talking to my wife about this not too long ago, and we were talking about what instruments we're going to learn when we get more time freed up. I'm going to learn the violin. She's going to learn the guitar.
Okay.
But we're going to do that. And, we're both trying to pick up new languages now. So your brain likes novelty. So keeping your brain active, but giving it novel things to do. Really important.
Yeah. No, I definitely, it's funny. I was thinking about the fact that I played saxophone and clarinet for quite some time in my early childhood. And I thought, why aren't I using, I feel like it's such a waste. I loved it. And it was so much a part of, my life. And of course, everything, you build muscle and everything to do the right time. And I thought, oh God, I lost that for sure.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think just staying active too in what you do, looking at all of the new futuristic approaches to medicine, keeping yourself in that moment and really being curious about it and looking at it to help people that you help to live a healthy life. What is going on? What are you finding? What are the most exciting discoveries?
In medicine?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I have an insatiable curiosity and always did when it comes to medicine and health. And I cannot remember a time in medicine. And I know, again, this is cliche as well, but it is really true where the advances are it's not linear anymore. It's exponential.
Yeah.
And so there's so much happening right now. Something that's in the zeitgeist right now are GLP-1 agonists, right? I could talk about many other things, but let's talk about something that everyone's heard about, which is Ozempic and Mounjaro.
Yes.
So developed for diabetes, found to be the best weight loss drug there is. But now we're finding out that it appears protective for the brain, protective for the heart, protective for the kidneys. It reduces blood pressure. It reduces cholesterol. It reduces inflammation. It reduces the fat that we can't see around our organs, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So I was interviewing someone who wrote a new book, and this is someone who's not prone to exaggeration or hyperbole, who said that it's conceivable that most people one day will be on a GLP-1 agonist. Now that's a strong statement.
Yeah.
But we understand they've been around for more than 20 years, even though people haven't really heard about them for the last 5 because there have been advances and the newer drugs are better.
Right.
But one of the problems, of course, with this, there are side effects like loss of muscle, right? So there will be improvements in these drugs over time that will prevent the loss of muscle. But, it's pretty exciting, some of the new products that are coming on board that appear, while developed for one thing, appear to be quite helpful for another. And there's a lot of other things right now in the longevity space that people are getting excited about. Everything from stem cells to exosomes to hyperbaric oxygen to repurposed drugs. They call them gerotherapeutics.
Oh, and so what are they?
So that, Mounjaro and Ozempic are some of them, but there's others like a new class of drug called the SGLT2 inhibitors, another class of drugs used for diabetes, but may protect other organs like the heart and the brain and the kidney. There's metformin, an old drug that's more than a century old.
We had Nir Berzel on, who you know very well, and are friends and work together. So we talked about the experience. I interviewed him maybe over 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Probably almost 8 years ago.
Wow.
And he mentioned this diabetes drug and that I should take it. And I looked at him and I said, are you taking it? And then I thought, oh my God, I don't know about this guy and what he's talking about. And then, whoop, there you go.
There you go. So that's an example of a repurposed drug.
Yeah.
It's being repurposed for an indication or a condition for which it wasn't developed.
Yeah.
Right? So we're repurposing it. And then there are others, from osteoporosis drugs to supplements like N-acetylcysteine. So there's a variety of different chemicals and drugs that are being repurposed. There's a work being done in the rejuvenation space where if you expose an old cell to certain chemicals, you can rejuvenate that cell and bring it back to its younger age.
Like that.
So
how fast is that moving along?
It's moving pretty fast.
Like that too.
It's moving pretty fast.
Really?
And then there are, we have a different, when you have your genes, you have your DNA, and your DNA is converted into what we call RNA, and your RNA is converted into proteins. Now, there are medicines coming out that target those proteins to stop them from causing disease. There are medicines coming out that target the RNA. And now, you might have seen in the news a couple of weeks ago where the first baby was treated with CRISPR technology, basically gene editing.
Wow.
So going in and fixing a gene
that
causes a disease with unbelievable molecular precision. It's just like you have 3 billion letters and you go in and you basically, with a pair of scissors, cut out one letter and substitute it with another.
Wow.
It's just incredible.
Is this the kind of medicine that we would see robots, like the robotic doctors? I mean, everything you see about China and robotic doctors seems to be the kind of thing, these very specific tasks that can be repeated by, once it's discovered, then there's the use of robots. Is that realistic?
Well, robotics and artificial intelligence is being used to actually design some of these drugs to be able to then give it to a patient. And somehow, some way, after an infusion, whatever drug or chemical you've infused finds its way to exactly where it needs to go.
I find that incredible.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's when you think about it, it's just astounding, isn't it?
Now it's the, for instance, a stem cell or exosomes, or let's say stem cell. So it's the stem cell that's finding its way, or the way the drug was designed that helps?
Both. So the stem cells, for example, appear, at least in animals, to find their way to the tissue that they're needed.
Yeah.
And one of the principal mechanisms by which we age is that we lose stem cells. When we're born, a baby they're a bundle of stem cells, right? So if a baby gets cut or injured, they repair and restore tissue quickly. As we age, we lose stem cells. Stem cell exhaustion is a principal hallmark of aging. So what if you could restore some of those stem cells, especially to an organ or a tissue that needs repair, whether it's the brain, the heart, muscle. And so now the last time I checked, there was about 1,800 stem cell clinical trials targeting over 900 different medical conditions.
It is so exciting. And I'm like you, agree that this is probably the most exciting time in my lifetime, not only for medicine, but also, in my adventures with AI, seeing how much can be changed. So when we look holistically at how our medical health will be improved, our brain health will be improved, our lifestyle will be improved what do you predict the doctor of the future, the hospital of the future, the clinic of the future will be?
Well, a big part of it's going to be on this.
Yeah.
So we, in the future, will have all of our data coming from all of our sensors. It'll be linked with our electronic health record and everything that's known about us, all the testing we've ever gotten, including, by the way, our genomics and our microbiomics and our proteomics. So there's going to come a day when we're going to know for an individual all of the 200,000 proteins that they have, their gut, the trillions of organisms in our gut.
Yeah.
We're going to know what their genome looks like. We're going to know what their epigenome looks like, because our genes are not modified over time, but how they're expressed is modified over time. So all of that data, that mountain of data, and we'll be able to have a digital twin. And that digital twin will basically tell us and predict, based on all of that data that we know and all of the data coming in, what diseases we're at risk for and when they're likely to happen. Because if I said to someone, your setup now, your risk of Alzheimer's disease, for example, is higher, and we're predicting based on your digital twin that it's probably going to happen when you're 95. Well, that's quite different than saying your risk of Alzheimer's disease is higher and you're probably going to develop it when you're 62.
Yeah.
So being able to predict the future for an individual patient based upon AI's ability to synthesize and aggregate all of that data real time and continue to update it with things that are happening like exercise and diet and sleep and whatnot. So there's going to be a time in the future where the AI digital assistant on our phone will tell us what to eat today, how many steps we should get,
oh my God,
how much exercise we should get. And it'll give us like a FICO score for our health. Everybody has a FICO score, a credit rating.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have a FICO score for our health.
I love it.
And we'll have an AI digital assistant providing like a Waze, right? The app Waze. It'll provide a roadmap for us. Short term, like today. Short, midterm, like what we need to be doing over the next several weeks, and then long term.
Yeah.
That's going to be the future, because it's impossible for one physician. If medical knowledge is truly exponential and is doubling at a pace that's dizzying, how can one physician keep up with all of this? It's impossible. How can a team of physicians keep up with all of this?
No, and it's incredible because everybody's a human being, right? So if you are having to put all of this information together, follow up on it. I know for years, how many times have you handwritten information about a patient after, like, why are you handwriting all of this? Why are you taking that time to do that when there's other mechanisms now that can take this information, no spelling errors, no doctor's handwriting, like perfectly.
I have that right now. So plus it's a better patient experience and a better doctor experience when we can sit and look and talk to one another rather than me typing or writing.
Yeah.
And so right now when I go in to see a patient, I turn on an app on my phone and leave
you
it
record
there.
it. Yeah.
It's recorded.
Yeah.
So when I go back to my desk, it's all there.
But versus the years that, your time was divided up by some of these other tasks that were critically important.
Absolutely.
But now the use of your time and then having that information to refer to. And I do think, I do want to know how soon this is going to happen, because I feel like tomorrow would be a really good time to get this all in place, like all of this future. How far out in the future do you see all of this coming together? It's not a slow, but it's a fast, but it's a build, right?
It's a build. But as I said, there's a famous futurist who has said that, our thinking is really linear. And in this day and age, with the advent of AI and with the pace of research, we've hit escape velocity. It's now become exponential. And that by 2028, 2029, we're going to be at a point where we're going to be able to extend people's lifespan. I don't know if it's going to happen then, but at the pace we're going, I can't imagine that if we're sitting here in a decade, by 2035, that medicine and health looks completely different.
Yeah, everything. I do think, a lot of the argument about AI is that it takes jobs and it's not creative, and all of these kind of fears are real. There's a lot of real fear that should be paid attention to. We need guardrails. We need, a lot of protection. But the role of the doctor when he or she has all of this information, I think almost has to stay the same. And that's why I talked about the robot. And I was like, there's a place for robots, I'm sure, in doing surgery or something.
Yes.
But then I always say AI doesn't have emotion, doesn't have a soul, doesn't have passion, doesn't have compassion. So it can't be creative and it can't do that role. And I even went to ChatGPT and said, do you have a soul? Do you have passion, compassion, emotions? Can you be creative? And ChatGPT said, no, I don't have a soul. I don't have passion, emotions. And I can be creative if you give me something to be creative with. If you give me, but they're not going to come up with that. So the doctor's role to communicate to the patient is so critically important that I think that aspect of having all the information and then communicating it and going through all the data and then guiding people when it comes to health, it's stressful and everybody's got concerns. So what do you see your role being? I mean, you are more like in the upper echelon of research and finding new things, but what do you see your role and other people in medicine doing when it comes to the patient interaction in the future?
It's a great question. And it's just what you said, Norma. I remember graduating from medical school. And, when you graduate from medical school, you think you know it all. And I remember saying to my wife, I said, sort of getting the hang of the science of medicine here a little bit. But what I need to work on is the art of medicine. Mm-hmm. It's the compassion, it's the empathy, it's how you communicate to patients. And so that will never go away. I will say that AI won't make physicians obsolete, but physicians who don't utilize AI will become obsolete.
Yeah.
I use AI every single day now.
Yeah.
2 years ago?
I know. But
are you kidding me?
It's so tempting. I mean, every time I think of something, I can't help but just, I wonder if I let me do some prompts here on this. And I ask everything, like, do you have a soul? I think finding how AI works and truly understanding it by using it a lot is the key, right? Is that where you're finding it?
There are whole books now on prompt engineering. The value of the responses that you get depends on the questions that you ask. But it's impossible for one person, again, to synthesize all of the world's knowledge. Like impossible.
Right.
It's impossible for me to review the 3,000 medical papers that are going to be published today.
In 32 seconds.
Yeah,
Right.
it's just, exactly. And so, but this will tell me if I wanted to know, have there been any papers published, like the shingles vaccine that was recently published and got all the news, right? I can ask, if I was just asking a question like for me, should I get the shingles vaccine? It will tell me that that paper was published, and it will go into as much detail as I wanted to, the pros and cons of that paper, right? And allow me to understand whether the shingles vaccine is right for me. I'm just picking that as an example. That was something in the news recently. So yeah, to keep up to date. And now there are like point 3, and there's deep research, and, OpenAI, and now there's all these competitors, at least 10 competitors now of OpenAI. So this is just going to keep getting better and better and better. And it's going to make doctors smarter so that you can take all of a patient's information, put it into one of these chatbots or one of these platforms, and get back a differential diagnosis and what is the most likely diagnosis. And it may be something that you weren't even thinking of. So it's going to make us smarter. And then you can say, today, what is the right treatment approach to this patient, right? What are the treatment options? And at least give you options. Then it's up to you to go in and do your homework, right? But at least it's a starting point, and it keeps you up to date real time. So when I came here to New York, I came here to be the chief science officer. I was going to translate science into medicine real time, because it takes about 15 to 20 years or longer in some cases for advances to make it into medical practice. What would it look like with now artificial intelligence for it to take 15 to 20 minutes?
I know.
Right? That's where we are right now. And so the future has never looked brighter. The future, why I came here, was really the future of medicine, I think, is going to be built around prevention. Not around, we spend $4.5 trillion, and the overwhelming majority of that money is spent in sick care and in treating disease, waiting for it to develop, and patients come in with symptoms and then trying to treat it. But there's so much we can do to prevent most of the devastating diseases that we face. It's unacceptable that cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer, when 90% of it's preventable.
It's crazy. It really is crazy.
That includes degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease and stroke. Some of the most devastating diseases are all largely preventable. Now, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and these are still vexing. But even then, there's a lot we can do to prevent them. Today, most experts believe that 45 to 50% of dementia is preventable.
Wow.
Can you imagine what that's going to be in another 2 years, in another 4 years? Because they keep updating it every 4 years.
So I remember we had a conversation not a long time ago, but a while ago. And you were giving me some data on the difference between men and women with Alzheimer's and what that ratio was. And I think also Parkinson's, that they were different, or what was that?
So, if you took 100 people in the United States right now with Alzheimer's disease, 2/3 are going to be women.
I hate hearing that.
So it's 3 times more common in women.
And is this a hormonal thing?
Partly because, the fastest aging organ in the human body is the ovary.
Seriously.
And if we understood the biology of aging in the ovary, we might be able to better understand the biology of aging in general. But estrogen, after menopause, estrogen plummets. And estrogen is an important neuroprotective molecule. It reduces inflammation in the brain. It clears amyloid and tau out of the brain. It enhances energy production in the brain. It's an antioxidant. It's protective for the brain, which is why some of the data shows that within the first 10 years of menopause, if women are started on hormone replacement, and you have to,
it's individual,
but it may be very protective for the brain. So estrogen and female sex hormones, yes, play a big part of it. I think the other thing we talked about, Norma, was the fact that up until 1993, Congress had to step in with a Revitalization Act to ensure that women were equally represented in clinical trials.
Yes.
We do all these clinical trials for new medicines, and they were done mostly in men.
Yes.
And the science that generated those new molecules that happen in rats and mice were all done in male rats.
Yes, we've had that conversation.
And so really the fact that we don't, I published a paper today on the sex differences and what we call the sexual dimorphism, or the female specific effects of pain, the biology of pain and how you treat it in women, and it's different than men. But that goes across many medicines, because for women, what we call the distribution of medicines, the differences in absorption, distribution to different tissues, its metabolism by the liver and other enzymes may be different in women. Their body composition is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so drugs, therefore, are distributed, absorbed, and metabolized differently. So that if one, but when we give us everything from a sleep medication to an antidepressant to you name it, a statin, we just give the same dose.
Yeah.
And with the same titration schedule, and not think about the fact that we're treating
yeah.
A, unique individual, but also B, there may be significant sex differences here.
Yeah. And different size. I mean, just the
body
fact
composition.
That,
exactly.
There's such a difference. We also had the conversation about the fact that a lot of the research is done with mice, and it tends to always be first choice male mice, and that dealing with female mice. Well, I remember hearing through the years, well, it's costly to do 2 mice, so we choose a male mouse. And I thought, why? I don't understand. And then, we've had the conversation that female mice menstruate and it gets messy. And who wants to clean that up? Certainly not a male scientist. Mm-hmm. So it's like so ironic that that could be something that sort of delays the research.
And it's the same thing in humans, right?
Yeah.
It's a variable that you can't control for.
Yeah.
And you don't know how that variable is going to affect that medicine or the outcomes from that medicine. So it's easier just to avoid it. Also, there was a concern that, almost in every clinical trial I've participated in over the last 3.5 decades, some women get pregnant in the clinical trial. So there's always a concern about pregnancy and what an experimental drug would do to a developing fetus and to that pregnant woman.
Yeah, it is complicated. And I think because it is complicated for women, and that women literally live on a hormonal roller coaster throughout their lives, that's why we need more information and more research. And I really do think the idea of estrogen and brain health, estrogen and overall health is such a concern, I think, if you're a woman. How do I deal individually with estrogen as a female? And I think that's the question every woman asks at a certain point. I think as soon as women are getting into their 40s, they're thinking already, well, I may not be having any children anymore, or now what's going to happen, and how do I deal with the loss of estrogen? What's going to happen to emotionally how you feel? What should my diet be? How is it going to affect my brain? And I've gone through many decades of working with me in my company. 98% of the staff here are women. And so I've seen how perimenopause and menopause affect all women in different ways, not to the same. There are some similar references, but the idea of hormone replacement therapy at that point being helpful for a lot of women where it applies. What's your advice about that? I mean, especially that it really does affect brain health and how women feel and behave going through the process.
It really does affect brain health, metabolic health, cardiovascular health. It affects, it influences the risk for cancer. There was unfortunately, about 23, 4 years ago, the Women's Health Initiative put a scare into all physicians where they found that estrogen replacement increased the risk of blood clotting and maybe dementia or cancer. And the problem is that they were replacing estrogen with a form that's not used today.
Oh, really?
And at higher dosages.
Oh.
And in women who were over the age of 60 or 65. So it was the wrong time with the wrong medicine at the wrong dose. And unfortunately, it scared physicians away. And for decades, unfortunately, women have been left untreated, essentially.
Yeah.
And so it's really important for women early on, even at the age of 40, to be having these conversations with their physician, and especially with someone who has a lot of expertise in hormone support and hormone replacement. You know, I happen to work with a women's health expert, a midlife women's health expert, which for my entire career, I never had the opportunity. And I'm dealing, you know, whether I'm seeing people with migraine, which is infinitely more common in women, or dementia, or other neurological conditions for which women are more likely to be affected, and for which estrogen plays an important role in those diseases, not to be tied at the hip to a women's health expert, working together.
That's great. Yeah.
Was really a tragedy. Now to sit at a table with a women's health expert.
That's so great.
It's so fantastic.
Yeah.
But so women really need to be getting advice from people who are really expert in this area to understand whether hormone replacement or hormone support is right for them. And if so, when? Because some women, many women have symptoms around perimenopause, but not all. Does that mean that the women who are not having any symptoms or significant symptoms don't need to be treated?
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Because that lack of estrogen, like we talked about, the brain is doing things to their body, their brain, their heart, whether or not they recognize it.
I think there's always a point that they recognize it. It's different for everyone, but it gets recognized. Explain migraines, because that is like like you said, so many women experience migraines, and there are different kinds I've come to understand. So what is a migraine and why does it happen?
Well, in part, it's heritable. So there are over 180 different genes now that may increase the risk of someone developing migraine.
Really?
Yeah. So at its fundamental basis, there's a genetic predisposition. What happens in the brain is that the volume around sensory perception is turned up. What do I mean by that? Well, I sit in this room and the light is not bothering me. Sound is not bothering me. Smells are not bothering me. I don't feel any pain in my head, even though my blood vessels are doing this. But for people with migraine, all of that is turned up so that the light is too bright, the sound is too loud, the smells are too pungent, and that pulsation. If the brake is lifted when I say brake, normally we don't feel pain in our body because there's a brake that if I bump my elbow, it's going to hurt a little bit and then it stops because that brake is applied.
Yeah.
But if that brake is lifted, then all of a sudden, just that pulsation I'll start to feel that as pain.
Wow.
And the gain is turned up. So migraine is a sensory processing disorder. Movement too. Like as I move around, I don't get dizzy, but a lot of people with migraine get dizzy because that movement is now disorienting. So it's a sensory processing disorder that's largely inherited. Again, it's 3 times more common in women because estrogen, the cycling of estrogen,
there you go, influences
all of what's happening in the brain. So, before the age of 12, when young girls start to menstruate, boys and girls are equal in the prevalence of migraine. And after menopause, men and women are equal. It's during midlife when that cycles, right? Estrogen is rising and falling, that has a profound effect on brain chemistry and on brain electricity, right? And in someone with a condition like migraine, you bet it's going to influence it. So many women with migraine will really get horrific attacks around the time of their menstrual cycle. And in the first trimester of pregnancy, when estrogen is kind of fluctuating before it gets to a high steady state level, first trimester can be miserable for women. And so sometimes and the perimenopause, terrible for women with migraine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, because hormones
fluctuate. Yeah.
And then when it gets to a steady state low level, or during the second and third trimester, when it's steady state high, everything is good. So, and now we know with molecular precision some of the chemicals that are released in the brain that are responsible for the pain. And now there's probably 9 new drugs over the past 8 years that have been developed to target one protein in particular, and now more in development, because obviously it's not as simple as just one protein, but there are several proteins that may be important for driving the pain.
Yeah.
So if we block the protein, remember I talked about the DNA, the RNA, and the protein. If we block the protein, we can block the pain.
Fascinating. So a little earlier, we were talking about, the brain through sleep flushes out toxins or whatever. And I think I read somewhere that the position you sleep in has something to do with how efficiently you release the toxins. For instance, you wouldn't want to sleep on your back because for some reason it would restrict the toxins or the release. Is that totally fiction?
No, I think because obstructive sleep apnea is so common. By the obstructive sleep apnea,
I don't know what that is.
Sleep apnea is when you stop breathing during sleep, or hypopnea, where your breathing gets very shallow and you're not oxygenating. Obstructive sleep apnea is when the tissues in the throat, back of the throat and the neck collapse and block your airway.
Wow.
So it's very common in men and women in the population, more common in men, and more common in people who have either a small airway or a lot of tissue around the neck. So when you lie on your back and you lie flat, tissue will fall down and close off your airway. So a lot of people snore, and obviously people who snore are more likely to have obstructive sleep apnea. Because why do people snore? They're trying to get oxygen. So sleeping on your back is probably not a great position to be in for that reason.
Yeah. Well, I think there was something about sleeping on your side is better to release toxins from the brain. Or
part of the
something.
reason for that is if you're having these little episodes of shallow breathing or non-breathing, you're constantly waking yourself up, even though you may not even realize it.
Got that.
Because you wake up into a stage 1 sleep where you just briefly have a micro arousal and then go drift back. And then and you're doing this all night, and you wake up feeling you're in bed for 7 hours.
Yeah.
And you don't remember necessarily waking up too much, but you hardly got any sleep.
Yeah.
And you got, importantly, no deep sleep, because you couldn't get into a deep stage of sleep because you kept waking yourself up or kept yourself at shallower stages of sleep. So you can never really get in and stay in deep sleep. And it's the deep sleep, remember, that flushes all those toxins out. And so that's part of the reason.
So REM, so deep sleep is sort of the restorative. And then REM is what?
REM is rapid eye movement sleep. That's what REM stands for. And during rapid eye movement sleep, they call it that because their eyes are darting around. If you ever watch someone sleeping in REM sleep, you'll see their eyes moving around, but their bodies are still, because we're actually paralyzed during REM sleep. And so
What? Say that again.
We're paralyzed during REM sleep.
Well, what is that about?
Well, we have what we call atonia, so different regions in the brain that are responsible for REM sleep shut down tone in the rest of the body. So if I woke you up during REM sleep, you would be paralyzed.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, there is a disorder known as REM sleep behavior disorder, where people move around and thrash during REM sleep. That's not good, because that means that's sort of an indicator of someone who might go on to develop Parkinson's disease or Lewy body dementia, or So I'm getting in the weeds here, but REM sleep is important because it starts filing some of those memories away.
Oh, okay.
So all the stuff that we're talking about today, you need REM sleep and you need deep sleep to start filing those memories. So you tomorrow will be able to remember, well, nobody remembers what I say, but you'll remember some of what happened the day before. So it's like you hit save. It's like an opportunity to hit save.
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I get a tremendous amount of REM sleep, and I fight to make sure I recognize I'm not going to have an equal amount. That very rarely happens. But I wonder, like, why am I getting 2.5 hours of REM sleep? Like, that's a lot. I'm thinking, no, doesn't it seem like too much?
Well, here's the thing. When we age, unfortunately, we spend less and less time in deep sleep.
Yeah, but the REM sleep seems to be increasing. Is that because I'm overcompensating for?
Sometimes. And sometimes for people with certain conditions or people who aren't getting enough sleep, they very quickly go into REM sleep. So the latency between the time you fall asleep and the time you get into REM sleep is an indicator of how efficient and how restorative your sleep is. And as a proportion of your overall sleep, because you're getting less deep sleep, REM makes up a greater proportion.
Well, I mean, I'll get an hour of deep sleep and then 2.5 hours of REM sleep. And it's like, what is that? That's off.
That's
right?
kind of typical. I mean, deep sleep is less common, particularly in adults and especially in older adults. But if I look at my tracker and I'm getting around 13 to 23% of my sleep, deep sleep, I'm happy with that.
You are.
I'm happy with that.
Well, I just was curious about why that was. It wasn't. Very rarely are they the same. So I was just curious about why that was. I think we should probably end this with a word to the wise. What sort of, other than all the wisdom you've left here for us, what would you recommend to whoever's listening about how to proactively take the next steps into this future world? Is it measuring? Is it what are your thoughts about that?
A before C. A comes before C. A is activities. Diet, sleep, exercise. And by exercise, I mean both cognitive and physical exercise. And by physical exercise, I mean both aerobic and resistance. That is just fundamental. The B is the blood pressure, the blood sugar, and the blood cholesterol. Making sure that you know those numbers and know your targets, it's like uber important.
Yeah.
And the C, of course, is cancer screening. Everybody should get screened for the most prevalent cancers. And there's again where it's sex specific. But unfortunately, right now, one of the people I interviewed recently made a comment that our cancer screening right now is stuck in the 1960s because we screen based on age. We don't screen based on risk factors. We don't screen based on genetics. And so the fastest growing cancer in young women and men, even affecting them in their 20s and 30s, is colorectal cancer.
Wow.
And so, making sure that to get your genome sequenced used to cost $3 million, then $10,000. Now it's $100.
And the best way to do that, place to do that? Like if somebody wants to do that, what would they do?
If somebody wants to do that, they should speak to their physician. And, we do it with certain vendors, certain companies. And what we do is we do what we call whole genome sequencing, but we also do something called polygenic risk scoring. So we take 167 genes that are actionable, that we need to know about.
Yeah.
Because we cannot have someone who's at a higher risk for cancer on our watch and not surveilling them. Like, let's say they have a Lynch syndrome gene mutation and they're at risk, high risk of a colorectal cancer at a very young age. Well, I'm not going to put the national guidelines to start doing colonoscopy at the age of 50. So making sure that, I would recommend actually preventive genome sequencing. And there's a variety of different companies that do it, from Revity to Allelica.
Mm-hmm. So
making sure you get that, because that defines your individual risk for everything from Alzheimer's disease to diabetes to, so A before C activities, all that I listed, blood pressure, blood lipids, and blood glucose, know your numbers, know your targets, and cancer screening, because unfortunately, cancer affects way too many of us, and it's affecting us at earlier ages. So those are the things that I would leave people with. Unfortunately, we have 48% of our population who are hypertensive, and less than a quarter of them have it managed well. We've got 130 million people with prediabetes or diabetes.
Yeah.
We've got 42% of our population with obesity, and we have the tools and the knowledge to make that not so. Can you imagine what a healthier world?
It's right. It's coming soon where it'll be accessible. I think I really would like you to talk a little bit about Atria, the purpose of Atria. It's sort of like a window to future medicine also.
Yeah, so, what attracted me to Atria was the future of medicine is going to be squarely focused on prevention, living a more vital, healthier life, and preventing many of these chronic diseases that shorten our health span. We have the tools, the knowledge, and the emerging treatments that can make these chronic diseases obsolete. What would it look like if we were doing all the necessary testing to biologically optimize someone's health, so that we extend their health span, their brain span, their happiness span, and their play span? Because after all, that's what matters. What would that look like? So the ability to actually deploy a lot of this technology that allows us to screen for cancer, to screen for metabolic disease, to screen for the risk of neurodegenerative disease, and then to intervene and change the course and trajectory. Build a preventive model, healthcare model of the future, validate that model through research, and then make it accessible through our Global Health Institute for as many people as humanly possible. That to me was the inspiration, to build a model for the future, to validate it, and then to make it accessible.
Yeah.
Because it's an unstoppable force. It's coming. Somebody's going to have to do this. And so what attracted me was the opportunity to be able to make a small dent in the universe of the future of health and future medicine.
It's incredible. And you're an important part of it. There's such a great team of experts, and it's well thought out. And thank you so much for doing this. I know this is such a big ask.
It's the highlight of my day.
I can't believe you're here doing this in a fashion setting, but it will be really appreciated. My audience, for some reason, do very high scores and following on any medicine or conversations we have with people who are knowledgeable about medicine.
And I get to spend an hour with Norma Kamali. So what could be better?
So great. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Hey, press follow and leave a comment after you listen to the podcast. Thanks.